Hello and welcome everybody. This is your girl Melanin Audacity, and today I am officially kicking off the channel. Before I begin, please click the subscribe button. There is no charge ever for doing that. Then click the notification bell. This sets up notifications from YouTube to your preferred method of receiving those notifications, whether it be email or text messages that will let you know when I've posted a new video for you to watch. That's the only purpose for it. It's free, it doesn't cost you a dime. It just takes not even a second to do. And that's it. Once you've clicked the subscribe and the notification bell, you're all set for the channel forever. Like I said, this is your girl Melanin Audacity, and you can catch me across popular social media sites: Facebook, Melanin Audacity Nefertari. On Instagram and Twitter, I'm simply Melanin Audacity, as I am here on YouTube. Welcome and thank you for watching. I do have a presentation to share with you. I just had to get that little intro information out. So give me a second while I set up the share screen. I might go away for a second, but give me a minute for you guys. It should be coming up now. I think it is important for you guys to be able to see and visualize what I'll be talking about in the next series of videos. So first off, I want this channel, the Melanin Audacity Nefertari channel, to be an experience. For example, this series of videos will set the tone for the insight my future videos will contain. It is my mission to utilize this platform to provide a brand new perspective and a deeper understanding of our history, why we are treated the way we are, and to ultimately offer solutions to the problems that plague our communities. Now, I do have notes to keep me on track, so excuse me for looking over to the left. I am making sure I'm staying on track. Um, back to what's the topic at hand. So my main focus is to shed light on the demise of the Black family unit. It is something that has almost been eliminated in our communities. More and more, I see too many absent fathers and mothers on occasion, grandmothers raising their children's children, children having children, perpetuating a cycle drenched in historical conditioning, who grow up without a clue about who they are and where they come from. And I want to highlight the reasons why that is, and uh, the correlation to slavery and post slavery all the way up to and including today. The Black family unit must return to the support system it once was, complete with structure, discipline, honor, and love, if we are going to make any significant changes to our lives. Um, the other element I would like to address on this channel is why we have a hard time supporting one another. I want to dig into why that is. What are the causes and why it happens? So again, those will be subsequent videos. I just want to do kind of an intro video so that you guys can really get a feel for what to expect. So to be clear, I understand that there are several organizations out there fighting injustice on all fronts for the Black American and all people of color. Ultimately, I would like to eventually collaborate with them in some capacity or start my own organization operating exclusively on rebuilding the Black family unit. And again, these will be subsequent videos you'll find on my channel. My expectation for this channel is that my subscribers, remember when you hit the subscribe button, you become a subscriber. My expectation is that my subscribers will actively contribute by providing serious suggestions instead of general comments or being trolls. I'm not here for that at all. Because if we want to see change, we have to identify what that change should look like and how to execute it. We all have to contribute and come up with solutions that will lead to the destinies we deserve, as opposed to waiting and depending on someone else to take charge, or by expecting a group or organization or even the government to decide for us what works best for us. That model has not worked for us in more than 400 years. We have to demand that our lives, the lives of our children, and our legacies will no longer be minimized, undermined, or undervalued, or valued less than anyone else's in this country. We can't continue as Black Americans, African Americans, Caribbean Americans, and people of color, however you refer to yourself, and you fall into that category. We cannot continue to do the same things and expect different results. I understand also that this is a tall order and may seem to be an impossible feat, but together we can do anything we set our minds to together. Let me adjust this, what you're seeing, so that I can make sure it's in full screen. There we go. Give it a minute to come through. Okay, so at the beginning of the state mandated quarantine back in 2020, as a matter of fact, today is May 5th, 2021. But about a year ago, when we were under the state mandated quarantine, didn't know what was going on, being in the house so much, I started reflecting on things I've always wanted to know about the origin of my families. And especially, I was ready to confront a family rumor that had been haunting me deep inside. And that is, what should my last name really be? One day I went on Facebook. I attempted to go on Facebook Live. First of all, you have to learn how to do that. Anyway, I went on Facebook Live to tell like a short version, like to just kind of put it out there because I wanted to know if anyone else in my circle or around me that is my friend on Facebook had a similar situation or knew of it. So I went on there to tell my story, and after the video, I started reaching out to family members on both sides, meaning my mother's side and my father's side, researching my family tree. And I learned a lot of information, so much so that what was to be a part two of that Facebook Live has turned into this YouTube series that I'm finally able to start today. So while researching my family history, I decided it would be a great opportunity to include an aspect of American history to the story. Although I will not cover every aspect of our history, it is my hope that the information I am sharing with you will lead you to begin your own research, so that you can draw your own conclusions. I feel strongly that every American should have a complete understanding about the evolution of the United States and its effect on the Black American. So now I'm getting to answering the question. So, to answer the question, why am I doing this? There are four reasons that are important for me to explain. Number one is, I don't think enough of us have a complete understanding of the true history of the Black American for a few reasons. A, we were not taught the specifics, and the history books provide a watered down version. B, because in order for us to get to the truth and a level of understanding this channel will attempt to provide, we must read again, read some more, and then piece together information and formulate what makes the most sense. And then finally, it's a painful tale of abuse, torture, and misfortune, but it's our story nonetheless. The second reason, it is also important that we understand the effect significant historical events has had on our people over time, leading to and including the present issues we're facing today to show how things haven't changed much as it relates to our place in society and how we're viewed globally. It seems that it is everybody, rather, every other ethnicity versus Black Americans. Why is that? I want to get to the bottom of that too. The third reason is to get more of us to begin the journey of discovering who we are and where we come from by doing some research to find out who our ancestors were and possibly reconnect with our missing families. And the fourth and final reason is personal for me. Again, like I mentioned before, I hope that this series of videos will allow me to finally find out what my last name really should have been and possibly reunite with my long lost family. And hopefully through this platform, identify family members on both my maternal and paternal sides. So let me also unpack a little bit of that fourth reason because I know that there'll be people out there like, oh, we'll never know because I totally understand that we were taken from Africa. We had names there, we had culture and heritage that was ripped from us. However, I just mean for here in America, right? I need to know who I belong to. You understand? I hope you understand. Okay, so I just wanted to clear that up a little bit, but by now you should have a general understanding of my intentions for this channel. So let's get started with this part one of my family history, which will um, actually get into the names and stuff in part two. But um, as I tell my story of my family history, I will incorporate significant historical events of the times as they apply to what was going on during each generation, beginning with my ninth and 10th generation great grandparents, all the way through time up to and including today. I will compare differences and similarities to show how things have changed and how they've stayed the same for over 400 years. So let's start first by getting a general understanding of our history and the history of this country by joining me on this journey as I take you all the way back to the American Revolutionary War, all the way up to the Black Lives Matter movement in this series. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so come along and take a ride with me and see where I'm going with this. Because I'm sure by now you're like, okay, what the hell? I don't need a history lesson. Trust me, it's not going to be the type of history lesson that you think will be boring or that you already know. I'm telling you this from my perspective based on research that I've done. I could be wrong in some of these things, and this is where I need you guys to chime in the comments, send me some emails and things of that nature. But the information that I'm presenting is my perspective of what happened and why things happen. So don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell like I explained earlier. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Melanin Audacity. And if you're feeling generous and want to support my channel, please submit your donations to my Cash App account. Um, which will be in the description box. And again, people may say, why do people ask for a Cash App? Editing costs, these programs cost, these research programs cost money. And again, taking time to do the videos, everything costs money. Cameras cost money, equipment costs money. So that's pretty much my goal. So you'll see where those donations will be used as my videos get better and better with graphics and things of that nature because that costs money. So everything I'm about to share is to persuade you to go do your own research and start writing your own family history so you too can have something to share with your family your families and your children that can be passed down for generations to come. So let's get started. Okay, so here we go. As an introduction and to set it all off, let's go back in time. I'm sorry, let's go back to the time when my ancestors were slaves before I moved to the ninth and 10th generation great grandparents by starting with the American Revolutionary War, which began in 1775 and ended in 1783, and is also referred to as the birth of a nation. Um, in 1789, which I'm sorry, the birth, I'm sorry, the birth of a nation in 1789, which started almost immediately after a 74-year colonial or French Indian War. However, the American Revolutionary War lasted 8 years, and it is known as the American War of Independence that was fought primarily between King George III of Great Britain, which is now called Northern Ireland, and her 13 colonies in America. So I want to, before I move forward, I just want to kind of unpack that a bit for clarity. When the American Revolutionary War was being fought, it was fought with Great Britain because at that point, Great Britain owned or controlled the 13 colonies. So when we think of the United States, we think of 50 states and how big and grand states and counties and all this stuff that did not exist. During this time, there were only 13 colonies on the eastern seaboard, and the King George was the ruler of those 13 colonies because he financed the establishment of those 13 colonies. I just wanted to be clear about why this war started, right? Okay, to be clear. So, um, the 13 colonies in America, what I just said, resulting in the overthrow of British rule in the colonies and the establishment of the United States of America. Ultimately, George Washington, William Lee, and the rest of their crew were tasked with conquering new land for the British Empire, but instead decided they didn't like the rules handed down, would not comply, and wanted to keep the land for them to develop new rules themselves. So, this is important to understand. So, again, I'll repeat. King George financed the trip for them to come and conquer this land, for them to rule this whole land. However, George Washington, William Lee, the ones that they have these statues for, these Confederate generals and things of that nature that recently were knocked down and people have a problem with, they decided that they did not want to live under the authority of King George III because they did not agree with those rules, how things were run, how taxes were uh, accounted for, and things of that nature, or how they were figured out, and probably a bunch of things. But once, I always tell a story like this. George Washington sent a message in the bottle to King George to say, buzz off. We're keeping it your beat. You know how we say you beat. And King George apparently was like, what you talking about? You took my money, my boats, my equipment, all my stuff, and you're going to tell me to buzz off and you're going to keep the land? And that's why they had the war, right? As with anybody, if you understand that dynamic, how can you do that regardless of what you don't like? That's exactly what happened. So this is why George Washington is considered the founding forefather of this country. Christopher Columbus invaded North America 1012 of 1492, 291 years before the War of Independence ended. But he still has statues and things of that nature and gets credit for discovering the land. However, George Washington gets credit for the establishment of the United States of America. That's why he's the founding father. So I also have a tidbit about George Washington. He began questioning slavery during the Revolutionary War when he led North American colonies' battle for independence from Great Britain. And as you see on your screen, and I will read it, I never mean unless some particular circumstance should compel me to it to possess another slave by purchase. It being among my first wishes to see some plan adopted by legislature, which um, by by the legislature by which slavery in this country may be abolished by slow, sure, and imperceptible degrees. So this had to happen between 1775 and 1783, which is the length of the war. And at the end of the war in 1783, enslaved Africans had been in this country for 164 years from the first arrival of slaves in Jamestown, Virginia in June of 1619, which begs the question, why then did we have to have an amendment to make us citizens? At this point, there have been generations of Africans born in America. Okay. Drop your thoughts about that down in the comments below. Let's have a conversation. The Declaration of Independence and Independence Day, July 4th of 1776, represents the birth of a nation and celebrates this victory. Enslaved Africans have been in this country for 157 years, and it would take an additional 89 years before the 13th Amendment would abolish slavery in 1865. And then coincidentally, and while we're here, 1619 is also disputed as the first slaves the first slaves arrival is believed to have occurred as early as 1441. But for all intents and purposes of this video, I'm using 1619 as our initial first slave in the United States. However, if the 1441 date is true, then it would be 579 years of oppression and not the 401 year that we're claiming today. I think that's a very important aspect of what's true and what's not true that we have to dig deep in and find out what actually is the truth. Is it 400 years of oppression or 579? Not that it makes any difference. Oppression and what we've gone through is horrible no matter what. However, tell the truth. Is it 579 years or is it 400 years? Is my, the thing that, eventually we'll get down to it. So let me move along because I don't want this video to be too long. I got a couple more slides and then that's it for part one. So another historic event occurred during the same time period of the Revolutionary War and the Declaration of Independence. The Articles of Confederation were written. Created in 1777, it was the first constitution for the US and was replaced by the US Constitution in 1789. Continental Congress made an agreement among the 13 original states, formerly known as colonies. The guiding principles of the articles was to preserve the independence and sovereignty of the states. It established a weak central government, granting the same powers recognized as belonging to a king and a parliament. And the reason I wanted to add this in is because of this whole situation with Donald Trump and the insurrection, which I'll get into in a few minutes, where it seems as though his attempt or he underlying attempt was kind of to do that, to change things maybe from president to a king in a parliament. I don't know, who knows, but it was feeling really weird with what he was trying to do and kind of underlying things that actions and how he stirred up all this how he made racists feel comfortable being that way is what I mean to say. However, back to the Articles of Confederation, it provided clearly written rules for how the states League of Friendship, and that is in quotes, would be organized. In fact, it only legalized what the Continental Congress had been doing. They renamed it the Congress of Confederation, but it was still referred to as the Continental Congress because the organization remained the same. So they fought against King George, but then kept the stuff that they said they didn't like. I'm assuming, they don't go into too much detail. But again, like I said, you got to keep reading all this stuff and start piecing things together. So the issues with it were attempts to govern the growing states, revealed limitations placed upon central government, which rendered it ineffective. As weaknesses became apparent, especially after Shays' rebellion, requests for changes were made to create a stronger government. There were so many changes required that they trashed the articles and wrote the US Constitution, changing the government under the Articles to the federal government under the U.S. Constitution, which established the chief executive, president, courts, and taxing powers. So the reason why, again, that I'm adding this in is because I believe that we need to change the US Constitution. It was done before, it could be done again. And that's just going to be a whole nother series of subsequent videos, but I wanted to incorporate that into now so that as I'm telling the story of my family history, I'm also bringing in all these types of facts to show how these things affected us as Black Americans. But let me give you a little tidbit about Shays' Rebellion, which you see on the bottom right hand corner of your screen. Um, Shays' Rebellion was an armed uprising in Massachusetts in response to a debt crisis among citizens and in opposition to the state government's increased efforts to collect taxes on both individuals and their trade. Daniel Shay was a American Revolutionary War vet. He led 4,000 rebels called Shayites in a protest against economic and civil rights injustices. And again, I'm picking out how things change, but they remain the same, right? We had on January 6th, we had the insurrection on the Capitol, and I recall in some watching some of the footage, some of them were yelling out 1776 and other historical events back then that was very troubling to me because now I know what happened then and what they're trying to say. So they want to revert back to, which we already suspected, to times when we didn't have any voice, women or any type of minority, and it was just European led, run, uh, which kind of still is today, but not maybe, they've included us somewhat. But let me keep moving. That's why I got my notes because I will go off on a tangent. Um, so in 1787, Shays rebels marched on the federal Springfield Armory in an unsuccessful attempt to seize its weaponry and overthrow the government. The widely held views was that the Articles of Confederation needed to be reformed as the country's governing document, and the events of the rebellion served as a catalyst for the Constitutional Convention and the creation of the new government. However, in some publications, this whole thing is still debated as to whether or not, because of this insurrection, led to the U.S. Constitution being written. Um, Enslaved Africans have been living in captivity for 168 years at this point. Can you guess how many generations that equates to? If you can, put it in the comments, drop it down. If anything I said sparked anything in you, drop a comment in. I'll be glad to hear that. So I need to move on for the sake of time. The U.S. Constitution superseded the Articles of Confederation, as I said in the previous slide, and is the most important event of them all. It also occurred during the same time period. It was written in 1789, ratified in 1788. 77 years before the white man was forced to include the free slave as Black American citizens or in any capacity outside of slavery with the 14th Amendment in 1868. Constitution established the three branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch. That's what you learned in school. So we all are familiar with the three branches of government, but that's what the Constitution established. There are 27 amendments, three of which apply directly to Black Americans and biracial Black Americans, those who were the product of rape by white men and white women, I guess. While white women was raping the slaves too, so I'm sure some of them got pregnant. So that's still rape, you know. People of color, Caribbeans, they tend to consider themselves people of color. They don't automatically consider themselves Black. I'm going to have a series of videos about that as well. I feel strongly that we need to have our own identity. Um, they need to have their own identity. Everybody just can't be Black. You know, even Latinos or Spanish, they have their sex within Cuban. They have Puerto Rican. They have Dominican, and maybe more. But the point is, we have that same thing, but they have Latino. We just have Black, and then it's okay. There's not another type of labeling system, and I'm gonna make some suggestions about that in a later video. The 13th Amendment, 1865, abolished slavery. 30 Republicans, four border state Democrats, and four Union Democrats for a total of 38-6 to pass the legislation. That occurred 246 years after the first slave came to America and 77 years after the Constitution was ratified. So please be clear. The Emancipation Proclamation did not abolish slavery for everyone, everywhere, and I'll explain that later. The 14th Amendment, 1868, granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. And that I'll have another set of videos to really go into these three amendments in detail. The 15th, okay, so that one was 249 years after the first slave arrived here and 80 years after the Constitution was written. The 15th Amendment prohibited states from disenfranchising, which means to deprive someone of the right to vote. And how they were doing that, okay, let me read the whole statement first. Disenfranchising voters on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. However, the amendment left open the possibility that states could institute voter qualification equally to all races, and many former Confederate states took advantage of this provision. This is happening now. This is happening right now. And this is why I'm saying these things need to change. We need to revamp them. They need to be updated longer than since 1870. You understand, things change and they're getting, technology is changing. And so they have these loopholes that they continue to make sure are available for them when they need them in these laws. And we need to stop it. We need to band together, identify them, and shut them down. Every year there should be something new because every year somebody's finding a new way to get around doing the right thing. Um, let's see, where was I? The Confederate States taking advantage of the provision, and how they did it was instituting a poll taxes, literacy tests, among others. So they found ways to figure out how you could not vote. Right, they knew many of, and this is, I'm talking about 1870. They wasn't reading nothing. They wasn't allowed to read. So if you couldn't read a book, you couldn't vote. I mean, stuff like that. 251 years after the first slave and 82 years after the Constitution was written. And I think these numbers are very important to understand. We have been here for 251 years. And then 82 years after this Constitution that everybody's always howling about, oh, I'm protected under the Constitution, and we're still not protected, still not to this day, right? So at 251 and 82 is like three and change of maybe, yeah, three and change. So 300 years, I'm saying, come on now. And as you know from the recent events, injustice, election fraud, and things of that nature, we're still struggling with the same issues 400 years later. Now, I hope you learned something new from the backstory. And I'm going to stop here and continue with part two, identifying my ninth and 10th generation great grandparents specifically. And I hope by now you can see where I'm going and want to join me on this journey. Don't forget to like this video. It helps me get the videos out into the world. Subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell. And also, follow me across social media outlets at Melanin Audacity. So that's it for now. I don't want to make these videos too long. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you. So I had to stop sharing. Again, thank you guys for watching. I'm going to get even more into specific facts of historical events as they occurred. Um, as I move on through the different generations. But that's it for now for the introduction to the Melanin Audacity channel and pretty much how I tend to move forward with the channel and what type of content and where I'll be coming from, or basically my perspective on things. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.